Good day, CCF family. Welcome to Sunday Fast Track, where you ask real-life questions and we give you biblical truth. I am Francella Barte from the Sports Ministry, and we're here today with our speaker, Pastor Peter Tanchi, to answer some of your questions. Hi, Pastor. Thank you so much for the message a while ago about the unfathomable love of God, the Alpha and Omega. So shall we answer the questions? Okay, so for our first question, we started a new series entitled Alpha and Omega. Can you share why it is important to read and study both the God of the Old and the New Testament?
It is so crucial because God reveals Himself in a very clear fashion in the Old Testament. For example, God explains to us His name. And God says, I am abounding in loving kindness, justice, mercy, because God reveals progressively from Genesis all the way. But if you don't read the Old Testament, you will miss out on those revelations. And remember, the first 300 years of Christianity, you don't have the New Testament. It is still being compiled. What you have is the Old Testament. The Bible of Jesus is the Old Testament. What Paul used is the Old Testament. So it is important to read the Old Testament and the New. The New will explain the truth behind the Old Testament. But you need both.
Thank you, Pastor Peter, for emphasizing that we need to really read both the New and the Old Testament. So for our second question, Hosea painted the picture of how people would repeatedly turn away from God, and yet God will always bring His people back to Himself. How can we restore our relationships with those who shows no desire to change or reconcile?
Remember the story of Hosea? God did not tell us what happened to Gomer because your job is to love like Hosea. So keep loving them. Keep praying for them. Whether they change or don't change, don't play the role of God because you cannot change people. Only God can change people.
Thank you. Well said, Pastor Peter. So for our last question, oftentimes when we exercise grace or unconditional love to other people, some people who seek justice or discipline may question it and accuse us of tolerance or being blind. How do we determine the fine line of unconditional love and blind love?
The fine line between loving unconditionally and spoiling the person is so fine that I will err on the side of loving. But loving people is not tolerating. Example, if I love somebody, but he uses money to buy drugs, and he asks me for money, I won't give him money. So you have to use wisdom. But your attitude, your posture is crucial. If he comes to you, will you talk to him? Of course you talk to him. So how do you balance between loving unconditionally and you err on the side of either spoiling people or not? Number one, you always check your heart. And number two, you ask for wisdom. And number three, don't do things because you want to please others. You do things because you want to please God. And you get your marching order from God.
Thank you, Pastor Peter, for answering our questions. But before we go, we're inviting all of you to a night of learning on April 23 and a night of worship on April 24 with none other than Matt Redman, live here at CCF Center. Get your tickets at ticketmax.ph, and for more information, visit facebook.com/CCF Exalt Worship. Be sure to get your slots because slots are running out. And that's it for CCF Sunday Fast Track. God bless!